Safe work guides, safe work guidelines, safe work documents, safe work procedures, standard operating procedures, guides, procedures. Why is it we have to make health and safety so difficult? There's all sorts of names for safe work documents, safe work guides, safe work guidelines, procedures, practices, and so on and so on. And man, does it ever get complicated. Really and truthfully, it's almost like we're tossing this word salad in an effort to make us look like best practice poster kids. Why do we have to make it so darn hard? We need to keep it simple. If we keep things simple, you know what? We're going to attract an audience. People are going to want to read the stuff that we write, and they're more likely to follow what we're constantly trying to sell, and that's safety. So in this video, I want to talk about naming safety documents and some, practices that you might want to adopt around them. But before we get into it, I want to thank those of you that have taken the time to click that subscribe button and to ding the bell so that you get notified of new content when it goes up in the channel, and certainly when I put up a live stream. Now, the other thing I really appreciate is the likes and the comments and even the dislikes. I appreciate all of the interaction I get.
We better get moving.
Yeah, so let's get moving. Why are safety documents important, but especially what's in a name? And to some people, lots is in a name. A couple of reasons. Number one, we got to think about English as a second language, or for those of you that are watching in a different locale other than Canada or the United States, a different language than the primary location you're in. So for instance, if you're in Italy and obviously everybody speaks Italian, but what about if there's a whole pile of people there that are working on a project that speak Tagalog or something like that? The idea is if you're keeping standard names for your documents, then usually what happens is the translation is a lot easier. The other thing is you want to be able to have consistency. I've said before in many videos, consistency is key when you're creating safe work documents. It also makes sense that if your definitions and terminology are consistent, people are more apt to buy in and read your stuff. So now let's look at some definitions of typical names for and titles for safety documents. First off, you'd think I wouldn't have to do it, but yeah, safety or safe. Basically, a good definition for this is protected from or not exposed to danger or risk, not likely to be harmed or lost. A guide is to direct or have an influence on the course of action of somebody or something. A procedure is a series of actions conducted in a certain order or manner. So think step by step. Operating, and to put it into the idea of a person, is to have the control of the functioning of a machine, process, or system. And a standard, of course, is a level of quality or attainment. I know you're thinking that I missed something that's essential, and that's right, the word practices. I have a point to make about safe work practices a little later on the video, so just stick with me and I'll get to it.
Do you promise?
Yeah, I promise. So using the definitions that I outlined above, a standard operating procedure becomes a person controlling the function of a machine, process, or system using a series of actions conducted in a certain order or manner with a level of quality or attainment. So I got to ask you, is that how it works in your organization? Is that the spirit that you wrote that standard operating procedure in? And does it work for something that you wrote the standard operating procedure for, like step ladders? Just asking, not no critiques or anything else like that, just a question. On the other hand, the word guide suggests that you're directing, but not step by step, more of influencing the outcome by directing the course of action. So the idea of the whole journey, not parts of the journey, and controlling it. Where a procedure really is truly a more granular idea, describing each step with the intention of influencing how each step is carried out versus the journey as a whole. Now, I want you to hold on to that thought because I'm going to get back to it. But before we do that, let's look at a few more important considerations for safe work documents. Now, the first is why. I've outlined in other videos why safe work documents are important. But quickly, the three main reasons are, number one is they are the administrative control in your hazard control process. Also, not only that, because they're that admin control, they've been written so you have the intention of influencing the behavior of the people that are reading it. In other words, you want them to just work safer. And then finally, that other reason is just for compliance. So the idea is that you are controlling hazards by making people work safer, and that puts you in compliance. If you approach your documents with that attitude, that works the best. Really and truthfully, it does. Let's look at the audience. Who are the end users? Are you addressing workers where the native language spoken in your location is not the language of the majority of the people that might be reading it? Or is it something where you know that it's going to be a mixed audience? So workers that have a native language in your locale and others that don't. So you have to consider that. The next thing that you have to consider is the skill level of the people that are reading it. So know your audience. Is the intended audience all well trained and skilled in the tasks that you're describing? Or are they workers unfamiliar with the task? Or are they new workers where you're unsure of their skill level? Or is everyone a skilled journeyman? Journey person, tradesperson, well, I'm working on it. Okay, I'll get better at that, I promise. Now, the next considerations that you need to have are pretty simple when you get right down to it. Are there significant risks involved with the tasks that are going to be performed? Are there possible severe consequences? So for example, working at extreme heights, is this document addressing that? Is the duty or tasks that are being performed ones that are performed infrequently? Like something, for instance, like servicing, annual service of a high voltage electrical motor. Those cases where you might want something to be step by step, where you've described or prescribed each step in the order that it has to be done and what the step looks like. Or is this a duty with a set of tasks where there's little risk and a minimal consequence, and it's performed regularly by skilled people? Then you might want to just describe some main waypoints throughout it so that it's carried out in a safe manner. So let's get to how we're going to name these documents. Safe work procedures are great. That does spell it out step by step, pretty simple, that it's a step-by-step process to be done safely. But let's add something to the safe work procedure. Can you name, or can you think of a reason why you couldn't name documents a safe use procedure? For instance, you might want to outline a safe use procedure for step ladders, or a step ladder safe use procedure, whichever you want to call it. What you want to do is outline how particular work implements or tools are used in a safe manner while carrying out those duties. Now, this brings to mind safe work practices. Now, instead of naming documents safe work practices, I honestly used to do it, and now, after I've got older, more experienced, I don't think it's a good idea. Really and truthfully, what if we were to adopt this? What if safe work practices were things that were in all of your safe work documents? Things like pre-use inspections, choosing the right appropriate tool for the job or the right implement appropriate to the task, or delineating a work area so people stay out of it. Those are safe work practices and should be included in all of your safe work documents. A safe use procedure for step ladders might include things like a pre-use inspection of the step ladder, choosing the right step ladder for the job, delineating your work area, and other things. These documents can be addressed to all members of the workforce. They can be addressed to new workers, beginning workers, unskilled workers, but they can also be addressed to those skilled tradespeople, because it brings me to another important point about safe work documents. I don't like to think of it like this, but sometimes they need to be used for a disciplinary reason. Say, for instance, you have caught somebody working unsafely and you want to deal with it, but you need to have a point of reference for what safe work looks like. So, hence, proper safe work documents. These safe use procedures and these safe work procedures can also become part of a larger process. And what I mean by that is a safe work guide. Remember I talked about a guide being like a map for a trip? You want to consider creating documents that reference the safe use procedures and basically become a collection of those different procedures to describe how you're going to do something safely. Think about, like, for instance, lighting maintenance. You can have a safe work guide for lighting maintenance. The document would likely contain things like safe use procedures for ladders, safe use procedures for delineating workspaces, also lockout and tagout procedures, etc. So the idea is a guide becomes a collection of different safe use procedures along with the process for influencing or directing that course of action. Now, my thought on standard operating procedures. The problem I have with it is I often see them titled or documents titled for things that they're not standard. They're addressing things that aren't standard. Like one I see often is heavy equipment standard operating procedures when there's lots of different types of heavy equipment. You can have heavy equipment that articulates in the center like a front-end loader. You can have track-based equipment. You can have track-based equipment that tows something, etc. So they all are different, but the same. So rather than have a standard operating procedure for heavy equipment, why not have a safe work guide for different pieces of equipment? Just a thought. But where might I see a standard operating procedure used best? I would likely consider it a broad-based document where it's a significant part of a project plan. A good example might be a hazardous materials abatement removal process in a room or a building, where you might utilize many safe use procedures or safe work guides and safe use procedures. So just a thought. Now, all of this is my preference. It's what I found to actually work best. However, if what you're doing is working well,
Stick with it. Yeah.
stick with it. Don't reinvent the wheel. If it's working well, great. But if you're having difficulty with user adoption, with the workforce reading the stuff that you're putting out, or it's just not being adopted for whatever reason you can't figure out, why don't you think about using a simpler approach where you reduce the names of the documents and use a modular approach like I described, where you can have safe work practices are contained in all of your documents, you outline safe use and safe work procedures and make them part of a safe work guide. Just a thought. So we've got to the end. Thank you very much. If you liked the video, do me a favor, let me know. Give me a like below. I'll be leaving other videos up in the corner. Have a look at those and let me know what you think of those as well. If you haven't done so yet, you might want to click that subscribe button so that you get notified of new content when it gets put up in the channel. Until we see each other again, and I really, really hope we do, don't just think about safety, don't just talk about safety, but be a safety leader, be a safety influencer, provoke safety wherever you are. Take care. Bye for now.